I'd be really careful in that.
Well, that's good.
Have you seen the movie? There's a mini-series called The Loudest Voice about Fox News, and it's about Roger Ailes. Well, in the first show, he's interviewing possible news anchors, and this young woman comes in, and he interviews her, and he says, "And you're from Virginia?" And she looks up and says, "Yes, Abingdon." I don't think she's she's not a real person in the show, but yeah, then she gives the town motto, actually. It's a hoot.
I was in that, my son lives in a town of 70 people, and Suzanne Lay's cousin is married to a guy, and they have a house there. What are the chances?
Oh, there he is. Hey! The whole team is here. Hey, can I talk to you real quick? Sure.
Of course, Sydney went out to visit Travis Garrison. He lives in Abingdon. He lives in.
Oh, he's up there west of you.
Yeah, it starts with a B, but I've two girls.
That's expensive. Yes.
It's been she moved back to Alaska, and Travis always in Alaska. Travis's response was, Montana.
All right, I just want to make sure.
Do the right thing.
All righty, let's go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is the August 2019 meeting of the Town of Abingdon Planning Commission. Mr. Boswell, would you do roll call for attendance purposes, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Moran?
Here.
Mr. Schuman?
Here.
Mr. Austin?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, sir. First on our agenda tonight is approval of the July 22nd, 2019 minutes that have been provided to you. Are there any additions, changes, or other modifications? If not, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion to approve them.
Make a motion to approve it.
Second.
I'll second it.
Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'd like to abstain. I was not present at the July 22nd meeting. All right, next on our agenda is public comment time. I don't think we had anyone sign up, did we? Okay. Anyone would like to make any comments, they're welcome to do so at this time. If not, we'll dispense with that. Move on to our first public hearing tonight. All right, tonight we do have a public hearing. It is for purposes of the proposed zoning, Appendix B zoning ordinance amendment, consideration of an amendment to the zoning ordinance, Article 18, Site Plan Review, Section 18-9, the Historic District Entrance Corridor Overlay District. And I'd like to now open this public hearing. Mr. Boswell, would you like to review with us this proposed zoning amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd be delighted to. As Mr. Austin just said, this is for the proposed zoning ordinance amendment for the entrance corridor overlay, and we have been working on this for several months now. Staff took both of the drafts that were proposed to the Planning Commission, one with the design guidelines as part of the ordinance and one as them separate to the Town Council at the last work session, and got the Town Council's feedback on what they would prefer to see. The council would prefer to see the ordinance or the guidelines as part of the ordinance itself rather than a separate document of the separate guidelines. The council also had some interesting thoughts on the actual arterial roads and where they should begin and end. The council proposed that East Main Street should start from the Historic District and end at Thompson Drive. That West Main Street should start at the Historic District and end at Porterfield Highway. That Cumming Street began at 81 north to the Historic District, and that the full length of Russell Road remain. So that would mean that we would be taking out Whites Mill Road, Valley Street, Jonesboro Road, Porterfield Highway, Green Springs Road, Pecan Street, Hillman Highway, Ball Lane, Wendell Road, Trigg Street, Dedmore Street, Thompson Drive, and Court Street.
As I understand, the state mandates which roads are considered to be
Yes, sir.
arterial roads.
That is correct.
And are these the only ones that we have that have been state mandated as arterial roads?
Yes, sir. East Main, West Main, Cumming Street, Russell Road, Jonesboro, and Porterfield. But the consensus of the council was that Jonesboro Road and Porterfield Highway do not lead directly into the historic district, therefore they did not see a need to leave them in.
I like the idea of the exclusions for minor repairs and changes without the necessity of having to come to the planning commission.
Yes, sir. I know that that will make developers pretty happy. That way they don't have to come in. We're not holding things up on minor issues like that. We have one in particular that she was not happy about stopping her project. I hated to have to do it, but that's what it said, so that's what we did.
Can I ask a question, Jason? You had just given this application of waiver just as an example. This is what they use for the.
Yes, that's an
For the-
example.
for the historic preservation.
Yeah, we basically
Historic
took what the Historic Preservation Review Board does for waivers and gave, you should have a copy of that in front of you. It may change the look of it, but the wording is pretty much what we'd like to see in there.
East Main hit from the Historic District to Thompson Drive. Is that Thompson Drive, does it come down to that, is that across from True Point Bank? Is that, I'm not clear.
No,
where-
that's,
where
Thompson Drive is where it goes beside of Roses and
CVS.
CVS, up towards the high school.
Oh, okay, it goes up by the high school.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so it would end,
At Thompson Drive.
okay, and Thompson Drive ends at the high school, is that?
Thompson Drive would not be included, just East Main Street would stop. That's where,
Okay.
that's where
Where
the.
you see CVS down
It's
there.
signal line there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thompson Drive comes from Walden Road all the way across in front of the high school and curves around to Main Street.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's at that light where, okay.
So basically it encompasses most of the development up to the high school.
Yes.
If not all of it. Okay.
That's correct.
I just want to be clear on
Yeah.
where.
Members of the planning commission have any additional questions or discussions with Mr. Bosworth? All right, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As I stated a moment ago, this is a public hearing. It's open to the public for any discussion or suggestions that you would like to make. So please feel free to come to the podium if anyone would like to address this. All right, going once, going twice. If there is no additional or no public comment, I'll declare that the public hearing is closed at this time and invite members of the Planning Commission to state their thoughts on this amendment to the zoning ordinance.
I think it's what we discussed on 2 or 3 meetings and the changes that we discussed or the questions been answered. I move we accept this too and then pass it along to the council for their approval or for their
Second.
public hearing, it is.
All right, motion has been made, it has been seconded. Any additional discussion? If it's possible, let's do a roll call vote on this, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Morani?
Aye.
Mr. Schuman? Mr. Austin?
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on in the agenda to the certificate of appropriateness. There are two of them, I believe, three of them perhaps, two of them on the agenda tonight. The first is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, Marathon Realty Corporation, a certificate of appropriateness for approval of the final plat to subdivide the property into two parcels containing 1.221 more or less acres, containing parcel number 2 containing 1.461 plus or minus acres, located at the Meadows Development Lot 9, parcel 9A and 9B, tax map ID 021-8-9. Mr. Boswell.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, this preliminary plat was brought to the Planning Commission at July's meeting. It met all the requirements for preliminary plat. The only thing that staff requested on the final plat, the property does border AFOS residential property at the rear, so we made them put the setback in their yard there. The final plat, as far as staff is concerned, is compliant with subdivision.
Okay. Very good. Any questions from the Planning Commission, Mr. Boswell? Gentlemen, would you all like to address this?
Not for this particular plat, I think this
Okay.
is straightforward, the next one on.
I see. Very good. Any other questions in regards to this? All right, I'd be pleased to have a motion to approve this COA.
I'll do with approve.
Second.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? All right, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed. All right. thank
Mr.
you very
Chairman, I
much.
have something I want to add, and before we get to the next item, since it's related to this.
Yes, sir.
After I had some discussions with staff about the process for some of these subdivisions, they brought some ideas to me and some concerns about streamlining the process when it comes to doing a subdivision plat that doesn't have any new roads or easements or anything like that. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the term minor subdivision, but we used to do a lot of those where I come from. And then when they brought it up, and I said, well, that's actually not a bad idea. I thought we had one, I guess we didn't. But I would be open to that if the Planning Commission, and so what that means is the developer wouldn't have to bring in a plat 2 times. I mean, staff is gonna do an initial review, and generally, there's certain check boxes you're gonna have, and if it's got no new roads, no utilities, no easements or anything like that, it's just a land split as long as it meets the zoning code or anything like that. The hope is just to bring that to the Planning Commission 1 time and not have to bring them back 2 times. Al, do you have an opinion on that? I mean,
There used to be
There
a
used to be-
process for that in the subdivision ordinance.
there's not one
Minor
now, though.
subdivision.
but there's not.
So I don't want to.
Nobody's objecting to that though, if we decided to do that, okay.
No.
I was kind of surprised to see this come up again since.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, if nobody objects to it, then I'd like to ask Jason, we can work on drafting something and eventually bring it back to the Planning Commission at a future meeting and just to show an example if anybody has any issues with that, let us know. But I think it will help streamline things for the developers in a good way, especially since there's really not gonna be much we're gonna be able to comment on these.
Let's do it.
Okay, all right.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next on the agenda, certificate of appropriateness, application for a certificate of appropriateness, Marathon Realty, COA for approval of the conceptual preliminary plat review for Washington Crossings to subdivide the property into 2 parcels, the first containing 8.32 acres more or less, and the second containing 3.22 acres more or less, located at Cummings Street, tax map ID 105A-2-16. Mr. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This plat was again submitted by Marathon Realty, subdividing this piece of property. Proposed use is a hotel, and I think I will let Mr. Spangler address the Planning Commission on their plans.
Thank you. Mr. Boswell's correct, and I have been given permission from the buyer of the proposed property, which is the Hampton Inn. Obviously, they're having to relocate due to the VDOT Exit 17 improvement project. We've been working with them well over a year, finally came to terms on the acquisition. Obviously, it would be contingent on the property being subdivided. What it's going to do, it's going to replace the Magic Mart box with a new Hampton Inn development. They will raise the structure and build a brand new structure. So the Magic Mart, as we know it now, will be gone. And they will also lease additional space within our retained property for what they deem are complementary uses. I do not have any input on what that may be, but that's part of our contractual agreement with them. It facilitates the retention of Hampton Inn, excuse me, and associated tax revenues, jobs for the town of Abingdon. As part of our contract with Hampton, we have agreed to, once they go through the COA process, get an approval on their facade, is to improve the facade of our retained piece of property to match that. So it is a comprehensive redevelopment of the entire property. Same kind of with the parking lot, working with Tyler and Jason as they bring any COA, their site plan approval. We will work to improve that in conjunction with our retained property to improve the condition. Obviously, it needs improvement, as well as the functionality based on the two separate uses. That will be put in place closer to when they're opening, just you don't want to do the parking lot during construction. One thing, meeting with town staff last week, there was a question raised about traffic. We engaged our traffic engineer. I've got it included. I'm not sure if they distribute that as part of your packet. But just a letter of opinion that you got a 40,000 square foot retail use. We've been working with Hampton Inn. Like I say, for over a year, so we've purposely not marketed that property, hoping that we get something done to a point where they can redevelop that center. So we had some bites on that particular box. You know, now if this gets approved, we can focus that on our existing Food City box. But what we wanted to display and show the Planning Commission is that if we were to lease it to a retail use of any kind, there's an expectation of about 3,200 trips per day on an average retail use. That's using a land use code from the traffic engineer's manual. A hotel of 98 rooms, I believe they're projecting to be plus or minus, actually will reduce that to 679. So this represents a reduction in traffic to that particular center. And then also the next slide I pulled from the comprehensive plan. It shows this area as a future redevelopment site. And obviously, as I stated earlier, going through this subdivision plan, if approved, will initiate a comprehensive redevelopment of that center from current condition to brand new hotel and then existing facade that's going to be retained by Marathon to match. I will say the third slide down, and I alerted town staff this morning, which it may entail an additional planning commission meeting, I'm not sure, but I was giving a request by the buyer, Hampton Inn, on Friday. I was out of town, so I relayed it on Monday, that they would like to change the plat to include this. It's about 0.10, if it's 20 feet wide, 0.10 acres. And what I believe that they're looking to do is get connectivity to the state right-of-way for signage purposes. Again, I apologize. That came in on Friday. I told them that I would bring it up with the Planning Commission to kind of get a feel, get an appetite, relay that information, and if we have to alter the plat, amend the plat, then we can do that. But that's a question that they asked that I raised tonight. We're somewhat indifferent because it's on a piece of property or a portion of the property that's not usable. There's elevation embankment, so it's not really a material to us. But obviously the staff and the Planning Commission have to weigh in on that change to the plat. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about the plat, the project, timeframes.
beside the Magic Mart, there are there other buildings that would have to be raised for the?
No, the plan is the Magic Mart, if you look at it, is kind of a standalone building, and then it kind of, the shops adjacent to it, that's where the delineation would be. And those shops are what they would lease as part of their requirements. And I've heard anything from restaurant to even conference
Okay,
areas.
so they would own some of those
They
adjacent?
would just lease them.
Oh, okay.
That was part of how we got the deal across the finish line. They agreed to also lease some of our space for a specified
Oh,
amount.
okay.
If you'll forgive an old man with his bad hearing, Mr. Spangler.
Sorry.
Would you mind running back through your traffic information again?
Sure, I met with.
I have some concerns about the increase of traffic at that entrance.
Okay, well, hopefully this will alleviate your concerns. Last week, just kind of going through the plat, getting ready for this presentation, the issue was raised of traffic impacts. And so what we did is we went to our traffic engineer, CDM Smith out of Knoxville, and right now, what they're effectively, as far as the buildings, what they're looking to purchase is plus or minus 40,000 square feet of retail building. Since we've been working with them for so long, we have not marketed the property, we have not entered into a lease, that's why it's sitting vacant. We have had interest in that particular building, but we felt that we wanted to go down this path to redevelop the whole center. And so what we asked our traffic engineer to show is that, okay, just say we don't move forward with the subdivision and we just lease the building to a retail use, an Ollie's Market Outlets, a Big Lots, something along those lines. Per his land use codes, that would equate to about 3,200 trips per day for just maintaining the status quo. If you take that 40,000 square foot building away and build a 98-room hotel plus or minus, he's stating that the trips would reduce from 3,200 to 679, and I think he said that that is a trip reduction of approximately 70–85% a day from if we maintain the current use. Just because a hotel, you're not generating people come in and people leave.
But it does result in a gain in traffic at that intersection, I think, does it not, at that entrance?
No. This is showing that if we just push the subdivision away, did not move forward with the contract with Hampton Inn, and this is obviously a contingency of the contract, then we would move forward with maintaining the status quo and leasing that building.
Well, I think what Al was saying is, as it stands now,
Right.
it would increase it, but if the use didn't change, then it wouldn't, then it
I mean,
would,
yeah, it's a
it would not
vacant
increase.
building, but we've purposely left it vacant. But it would be a reduction of traffic from when the Magic Mart was operating. And they're saying a significant reduction.
I've seen a lot of deer accidents at that intersection. People want to make left turns where you just.
Well, I understand, but, that's, if we don't move forward with the subdivision or a hotel redevelopment at this location, then we'd be forced to put a retail use in there, and so the traffic will be more than if we're able to go down this path. And then obviously there's a connection to the Meadow Shopping Center that hopefully in the future that will be consummated, but I mean, that's anybody's guess. But,
If that worked out, you would all end up going to the traffic light, which would be a tremendous improvement.
Yeah.
understand that, but we obviously can't, we don't control that, unfortunately.
On the exit of that property, is there any possibility of everyone having to turn right and no left turns
Because
allowed?
if that's a condition, then we would just not move forward with these plans, because I have retained tenants that have right and left access right now, and I can't cut my nose off to spite my face and say, well, we want to get this hotel, so it's just not something that we would move forward with. If that's going to be a condition, then we'll just maintain the
does
status.
need to be right in, right out. I mean, it always, like for years, it's been a problem, people turn left out there.
Yep. I'm not gonna argue that, but
It is what
we're
it
not
is.
going to, we're not going to put that in place until at least, I think our tenants, ourselves as the owner of the retained land, and even the Hampton Inn would be okay with that changing to a right-in, right-out only if that connection to the new intersection is made. But before that, we would have to absolutely maintain right-in, right-out, which we have the rights to right now.
Their hotel numbers seem pretty low,
That's based off the traffic land use code for 98 room.
but, yeah, I mean,
It's Gould out of, at CVM Smith and Knoxville.
I don't know what if you take PM, or if the place is a quarter full all the time, you're gonna have 25 rooms, you're gonna have 25 people coming in and out, plus people work there, plus workmen, plus trash trucks, plus.
But the only
Anything
thing
else?
where your big difference is you could have 20 people going to a Magic Mart making a single trip, whereas
Yeah.
a person spending the night in Hampton Inn's only one, so that, it would make sense. to me
Yeah, I'm
that
not,
traffic-
I mean, I'm not against any of this, I'm just.
Yeah.
but-
That's straight from them. I didn't
Yeah,
question their
I'm
calculations.
sure they got charts and stuff that are smarter than that.
I think when we were talking to, I don't know if it was you, Steve, but they said on average, you might have said this already, it was like a 60% capacity on average throughout the year at the hotel.
When
And
we
so-
were just kind of talking
I don't
through
know. Maybe
numbers,
that's
I
what
was just kind of calculating in my head, but we thought that getting something official from somebody that
Yeah.
is educated and professional.
But I mean, it's realistic to assume that all 98 beds
I
at any
think
time, certain weekends they probably would be.
65% is what I've heard that the average for Abingdon occupancy for hotels.
I'm sure, like on weekends and certain things.
I mean, it averages out over
Yeah.
over the year,
Over the
but that's
year.
kind of the, summer's gonna be higher than winter.
Do you know if those numbers included the employees? That included all traffic going into the site? I assume it did.
I assume so.
Okay.
That's straight from, that land use code 820 and land use code 310 straight from the traffic manual.
Okay, so it's
For that type of
it's probably-
use.
All right, any additional questions? Thanks, sir. All right. What's the desire of the planning commission in regards to this certificate of appropriateness?
I'll move that we approve the application for certificate of appropriateness as submitted.
I'll second.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Is there any additional discussion?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, just, I know we probably glazed over it, just any feedback that I can give to the Hampton about that potential change in the plat would be helpful. And again, I'm kind of just the conduit.
Oh, you mean that strip there?
20-foot strip.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll get with Jason as far as how we need to, I guess we can just go to final.
I don't
make that
see
one
it.
change.
I mean, it's not really a substantive change. I mean, it's just, doesn't really affect the use of the property or
I think it
anything.
just needs to be denoted on the final plat as such.
So we would probably need to, if the planning commission wants to make a recommendation, would we make it with that addition on there?
I think it's a little difficult to do that right now with the, there's an unknown to it for us right now, but I don't see a problem in getting it approved.
I guess just from a closing time frame, will that have to come back to preliminary in September and then to final in October?
I would hate to have to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah,
This will come back in September.
Yeah, I think as long as it's
Right?
denoted on the final plat, and Tyler, you can jump in if you want to, I think as long
Yeah, I
as
mean,
it's.
I don't want to speak for you all, but I think if you all are okay with it, then you could just say that when the final plat comes back, you expect to see that change made through staff review.
I think
Not
that's
unless you
fine.
have to add something else that they.
That's right.
This is a preliminary plat. It'll be considered.
Let's have a roll call vote on the motion that's been made and seconded to approve the COA.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sproles,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Guarini?
Aye.
Mr. Schuman? Mr. Austin?
Aye. All right, very good. Next on our agenda tonight is general discussion, first of all, in regarding the comprehensive plan and the update on that.
Yes, sir. I sent out an email to the steering committee members today. The time and date, or the date has changed. We were looking at doing the public forum and a steering committee meeting on October 1st. Has now changed to September 30th. In my ignorance, I forgot to look at the calendar, and there's a town council meeting on the 1st. So I can't have Mr. Bradley there in two places at one time. So the next public forum will be for land use and transportation portion of the comp plan, and that meeting will start at 4:30 to 7 at the community center of Abingdon. And the steering committee meeting will be from 2:30 to 3:30 that day for all the steering committee members.
Don't feel too ignorant because it's on a Tuesday and we had to change it because of the conference. So.
I can't.
Okay. It's normally on council meetings usually.
So yeah, so we're gearing up for that, so you'll be hearing more information, and we'll be sending out flyers and getting the word out for that meeting. It's
Okay.
and it's a very important meeting. Land use and transportation is extremely important when it comes to comp plan.
Very good. Any questions? All right, zoning ordinance update.
Well, we've done quite a bit with Mount Rogers PDC, but I think we're going to take a step back and look at, we've been discussing with EPR, the consultant that's doing the comp plan, of possibly taking over the zoning rewrite for us.
Just to do a little bit more
Just a little bit
comprehensive
more
approach to it.
comprehensive.
Okay. Very good. All right, does anyone have any old business or matter that is not on the agenda for consideration tonight?
I got two things.
Yes, sir.
One, the guys came in and wanted to demolish the old, I guess it's a gas station or oil place next to where Anderson's burned down. It's still a big pile of rubble there. Are they required to remove that in a certain time period?
Well, I don't know that there's a certain time period, but we can touch on
Okay,
that.
it's just a big pile of cinder blocks and stuff sitting there.
Thank you for that, Mr. Wilson. What else do you have?
The other thing, it's not too big a deal, but I noticed when they came in with beef over 80, you know, they're like, oh, we got plenty of parking. They're using half of Rose's parking
Yeah.
lot on the weekend, Fridays and Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So just wanted to note that.
And they said that they, in that discussion, the owner said that he would, fix a way for that to work. I mean, has he done that with the trees that he's supposed to do? I
The
don't.
trees are there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he's built a nice set of stairs up to Rose's,
Okay.
but he didn't check with Mr. Frizzell about building stairs on Mr. Frizzell's property, nor did he check with parking all his employees on Mr. Frizzell's property. So,
Well, I will say this about, because I've been up there several times with the movie theater and a Beef O'Brady's. I think some people park up there because they don't want to, like, I've seen cars up
Sure.
there and there's still spots available near the frontage.
well, it's mostly employees of Beef O'Brady's.
Oh, so the employees, that way they're not taking up
Yeah,
the spots.
Steve West
Okay.
and Holt doesn't
Okay.
park there, so.
Okay, all right.
Anyway,
That
I'm
makes
just
sense
saying,
then. Okay.
because, anyway.
Thanks for bringing it to my attention, Mr. Wilson.
Did they had enough spaces per the code, or when you looked at both the uses together?
No.
They did not, no.
No, they did not. They would have had to add
But they assured us it was no.
more than they.
Did we have to give them a variance then?
Yes.
Oh, we did give them a variance. Okay, all right, so, all right.
All right, any other matters not on the agenda?
I do have one thing, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
As we were going through an exercise, I'll call it the exercise of the recent courthouse issue, and there was discussion, there's been lots of discussion about amending the zoning code, text amendments and this and that. Staff spent a lot of time discussing that issue and also discussing what steps the applicant could take potentially to get where they want to be at that particular location. And we tried to give the applicant the county and or the developer the best advice possible. It's like, hey, if you want to get here, this is what you have to do. So during that research, we have a section in our code right now. It's section 17. I'm going to pass it out actually. It's you guys might be familiar with it, but okay, 17.4. 17.4. It's called uses not provided for. And it's my understanding, and maybe Al was here for many years. This appears to be the section of the code where the whole text amendment idea came in. So if somebody wants to change the zoning code and they have an issue with one of the uses that potentially is not listed as a permitted use, or they want to remove something or maybe add something as a special use, or whatever that may be, they could file an application with the council or with the town and seek a remedy by changing the zoning code. It's somewhat common in a lot of cities. I've seen it. Some cities do, some cities don't. So we had an amendment by Mr. Spengler, actually, who's not here anymore, but he applied for a text amendment to add a definition to the B2 zoning district, which would be courthouse, because we had courthouse listed in the old historic district. That has since been withdrawn, so that is not on the table anymore, which is why we're not discussing it tonight. So during that whole exercise, we consulted with Campbell, our town attorney, and we had a lot of discussions among staff. And it's our opinion, and Cam concurs with staff's opinion on this, is that based on state statute, which I believe I printed it out here too, it appears that the only remedy a citizen has or a property owner has to initiate a zoning change to the zoning code. Wayne's an attorney, so maybe he can chime in on this. But based on our interpretation, and what I'm doing is just passing out a section of the statute, section 15.2-2286 of the Virginia Code. It talks about how the steps necessary for a municipality to change its zoning code. And it says, I've highlighted the area, any such amendment may be initiated, 1, by resolution of the governing body. If the town council wanted to see a change in the zoning code, they could say we make a motion or adopt a resolution to change this section of the code, and that would obviously then be referred to planning commission. Or it could be by a motion of the local planning commission, which we could do to initiate that. Or it says, this is the key here, the third one, by petition of the owner, contract purchaser with the owner's written consent or the owner's agent thereof of the property which is the subject of the proposed zoning map amendment addressed to the governing body or the local planning commission, who shall forward such petition to the governing body. The way I interpret that, this whole clause is, this is staff's interpretation and our attorney has concurred. Motion can be initiated, or any amendment to the zoning code can be initiated by the council. Any amendment to the zoning code can be initiated by the planning commission, whether it be a map or a text amendment, but only a zoning map amendment can be initiated by a citizen or a property owner. What that means is, I can't just come in and say, hey, I'd like the town council to change their zoning code and do this. I believe that's inconsistent with statute. Now, we've sort of allowed it, doesn't mean, we have the overlay district, which was inconsistent with some parts of state statute, but these are not uncommon to see, where you allow people a remedy to come and change a code. We'll make it applicable. And I guess the town could do that. They could allow it, but it's not necessarily required by statute, or it's even, you can make the argument it's not allowed by statute. Of course, somebody would have to challenge that. So I think where this complicates things for the town is, anybody can just come in and file an application and say, well, I want to change the zoning code. And then we'd have to go through that process. To me, that's a complete waste of staff time and planning commission time and council time, when I think those things should be vetted at the staff level. And if somebody wants to change the zoning code, they should just come to the planning commission meeting and have it start here. Tell the planning commission, and if they deem it's worthy enough, then they can refer that to the planning commission. Because I'm sure we've had people come in and talk to staff about it and say, look, I don't know if that's going to go over well, and maybe try to steer them in one way or another. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think what we have in our own zoning code should be eliminated from our code. It specifically says, if you have a use that's not provided for, file an amendment, and the town council will consider it. And I just don't think that's in the spirit of the statute.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, given what we know a little bit about what happened with PALS, you're likely to create a level of animosity by people who don't understand even what it means to make that level of a change. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, I think that's the thing where if you go through staff, the staff's is going to explain,
Right.
if you do this, here's what that means. You know,
Right.
it's not a one-off. You don't just show up and say, hey, you know, I've got this piece of property I own, it's in the middle of a subdivision, but I want it to be something else. You know, I think that's where staff can say, look, that's just not.
Right, and if they don't agree with staff, we'll say, hey, if you want to come to the planning commission or a council meeting and address the council, that's your opportunity to do it. Generally, if it's a good idea, we think it's, we realize that there is a flaw in our code. This is a use that we didn't think about before, as technology has changed, or as, different types of mixed uses has changed. We're granted some flexibility with how we interpret the code, but things come up all the time, and if staff catches it and it's been brought to our attention, then I think then we should bring that to the planning commission or the council, then refer to the planning commission. But I think this particular section in our code is problematic because it means anybody could just come in and just say, I want to change the zoning code because I want to do this on my property, or I don't like this in this person's property. So anybody, this doesn't even say they have to have an interest in the property. This doesn't even say that they have to be a resident or a property owner. So my recommendation is just to, and I'd like to ask for a motion on this, is just to refer, and this would go to the council, is just make a recommendation to the council that we just eliminate this, so we just amend the code and just remove this from our code.
You're talking about section.
Just remove it entirely.
17-4.
Yeah, that's staff's recommendation, that we just remove this entirely, because it's not required by statute.
The state law, the way it's written, is really odd.
It is odd. It talks about how these can be done, but then it specifically refers to.
Starts out talking about amendment of the regulations or district maps.
Right.
And then down in there,
It specifically refers to the map, but I think this is all encompassing the whole section, all three, so they had to use that as a qualifier at the very beginning with that first sentence, but on that third sentence, it specifically only mentions the zoning map. Because if anybody comes in and says, hey, I want to rezone my property, I think it's part of the due process or whatever, you should give someone that right to do that. But it doesn't mean they can just come in and request an amendment to the zoning code anytime they want to.
so actually the law we've got in the zoning code makes more sense than the state law does.
In a way, it's just not right.
Even if it conflicts.
Even if it conflicts with it, correct. I would agree on that, so I would just say, I would like to make a motion that and we would have staff draft an amendment to bring it back to the planning commission. This is not the public hearing, obviously, we're not doing it here, we're just making that recommendation, which then would ultimately come back here as an amendment to the code.
Opposed? All right, very good. Anything else not on the agenda? What about our tractor and trailer advertisers?
Oh.
Where are we with that?
I'll be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, I've been so busy, that's been the last thing on my mind, but that is something that we need to address, and we will work with the town attorney and see what we can do.
Yeah, our hope is, honestly, Wayne, our hope is that we can address that in the sign code.
Yeah.
When we revise the sign code, obviously that's not gonna happen overnight, but, I can't remember if anyhow, I think that we can do, we will promise that we will approach the property owner and at least inquire about them removing it, because I see that they have a SOAR at another exit, and they don't have any of those there, so.
Those have increased in numbers, haven't they?
Yes, they
Yeah, I believe that's not the spirit of what the code is.
And I think they've been approached before, and their response was simply to move them around in other places.
That's exactly
On the properties.
Yeah, we'll follow up on
All right, let's do that. Any announcements? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye. And opposed. Thank you.
You know, I think it's a shame that we didn't have a public hearing on, weren't able to have a public hearing on that change for courthouses. I would like to have had the
I know.
opportunity to question the county on that, you know, and just ask some questions, and I hate that we didn't have the opportunity.
We were prepared. I mean, we were prepared to conduct the hearing if we had to.
I mean, there are questions I wanted to ask, and,
Yeah.
Good questions came out of your economic development.
I think,
well, and that's,
Yeah.
and I think that just, I talked to Tanya, and I think the next question that we have to decide is, how do we use that? Should we send that to the county? What should we do with it?
Scott, thank you.
And that's, and
Wait,
that's,
Scott.
and that's a, you know, I think
I gotta grab it real quick and then I'll.
it needs to go further, it can go further. In other words, if that's something you want to submit to Johnson, Barry, or,
Appreciate you.
you know, I think it's appropriate to do that.
Real question.